everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be going over this article because if you watched my previous video about it, the Israeli government is collapsing. The unlikely coalition put together by Naftali Bennett, Yair Lapid, and others, including an Arabic party, is falling apart. It didn't work. Okay, they did it to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. It didn't work. So it looks like the government's going to be dissolved. There's going to be new elections. I think it said that this is like the fifth time in about 3 years, 3.5 years. So and I was speculating, based on what we've read on this website, Israel 365, saying that Rabbi Kanievsky was in talks with quote unquote Messiah. Then I was like, well, that means that there's some person out there that thinks that they're Messiah. And so what happens when they decide to come out, be recognized by all the different rabbis? That would basically, that person would assume the government of Israel, which is a crazy thing to think. That would be quite the thing to witness, but it seems like it's like a very real possibility. And by the way, Rabbi Kanievsky, he was like the top rabbi. He was very well respected. He was huge. So I haven't read this article yet, but the title of it intrigued me. It says Bennett's government collapse was divine intervention. KNESSET spiritual leader charges. So see, already there's like they're looking at this from a spiritual point of view. At least, I guess, the Orthodox Jews, at the very least. So let's see what it says. Okay, zoom in. If it'll let me. No, don't know why. Okay, Rabbi Shalom Cohen. Oh, by the way, there's that name, Cohen. That means that he's typically, if you have that last name, that means that you're a priest. You're a Kohanim. So you have the high priest, and then you have the priests, which are descended from Aaron, Moses' brother, and then you have the rest of the tribe of Levi, in which case you'd just be called a Levite. So anyway, Rabbi Shalom Cohen, the spiritual leader of the Haredi Shas political party, and by the way, Haredi, that's like the Orthodox Jews, or they're part of, the Orthodox Jews. And a leading Sephardi spiritual leader. So that's like the Spanish, the part of the Jews that went to Spain and Portugal, that area, those are called Sephardi or Sephardic Jews. So let's read this all together with what we just learned. Rabbi Shalom Cohen, probably a priest, the spiritual leader of the Haredi, or Orthodox Shas political party, and a leading Sephardi, or Spain-Portugal spiritual leader, reacted to news of the news of the dissolution of the ruling coalition from Hadassah and Kerem Hospital, where he was convalescing. Quote, God's name is praised in the world, Rabbi Cohen said from Prime Minister Naftali Bennett after Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announced his plans to call for the dissolution of the KNESSET, which is like their Congress. It's their legislative branch, I guess. Quote, a government that harmed and tried to destroy Judaism and the sanctity of Israel and harmed the weak has been driven from the world. The Holy One, meaning the Messiah, the Holy One, blessed be He, has had mercy on the people of Israel. At least I think that's referring to the Messiah. I'm not aware that they ever referred to God as the Holy One. So, okay, so he didn't like that government, and I know that there were a lot of problems. We read a little bit about Yair Lapid. I don't understand really how their government works, but it's not like here in the United States. So in this situation, what happened is they formed this government, And Naftali Bennett was going to be the prime minister for the first half, and then for the second half, it was going to be someone else, someone named Yair Lapid. So obviously, that's not how things work here in the United States. But that's how they do it there, and whatever. Um, we looked into Yair Lapid, and he has kind of rubbed the orthodoxy the wrong way on certain things. Uh, One thing that I'm just recalling off the top of my head is he wanted to, because I guess there's a certain portion of the orthodoxy that they do not believe in being drafted or having to serve in the military. So there's like an exemption. And so he wanted to take that away. So that made them mad. Um, but there were like other things. He's like more of a centrist type figure. Uh, we read the story how the first person that kind of pull out of this government that was part of the coalition. It was this girl that was upset because they wanted to go ahead and allow leavened bread to be served in hospitals during Passover. Which she was like, if you're going to allow for that, then I'm out because that's that goes against our values as Jews. So those that are religious, I guess, they've had some problems with this government. Okay, with this government. So let's read on. The rabbi had previously responded to the resignation of. Oh, that's her. That's her right there. The resignation of Yamina MK, or I think member of Knesset, Edith Silman, certain, which broke Bennett's majority, beginning the process culminating this week in the coalition disbanding by saying, "quote They, the coalition, think they can harm God, but they will repent or fall." Wow, those are strong words. Those are strong words. Um, Continuing on, quote, "We say to the Holy One, blessed be he, do it for your sake, not for the sake of the nation of Israel, but for your sake. They're destroying all of Yisrael." Now, I'm not familiar with that phrase, so let's see what that means. Um, Definitions, literally the people of Israel. Okay, so they are destroying all of the people of Israel. This is harsh. Uh, the dissolution of the government will send Israelis back to the polls for the fifth time in less than 4 years. Rabbi Yehuda Glick, a Temple Mount activist and former Knesset member, was not as critical of the Bennett government. He prefaced his statements with the disclaimer, quote, "Everything that happens, big or small, whether pleasant or unpleasant, is divine intervention. But I need to update you that I was fired from my job of being God's spokesman. He probably had some very good reasons, but I really can't speak for him. I'm sure there are many people who can tell you exactly why Hashem, or why the Lord, made the coalition dissolve, but I am not one of them. Very often the people will tell you why God did something, uh, explain it in the context of someone else's sins, and claim that God is on their side. I don't think that all the good is on one side because we are all human and are complicated. Even in politics, we must concentrate on what we need to fix ourselves. Don't think that I don't think the government is anti-religious. Some people in the government may have said harsh things about religious people, but not all of them, and not all bad. We need to keep perspective, put things in proportion, and not paint everyone with the same brush in black or white. This seems like a reasonable person. Um, it's not always easy to get along in the Knesset, but everyone there intends to do good for others, Rabbi Glick concluded. Despite the coalition leader Naftali Bennett being the first openly religious prime minister in Israel's history, which that's like what? This is the first time that there was an openly religious prime minister. Um, Maybe it's because, okay, let me pull up a picture of him. Naftali Bennett. let's go to this right here, New York Times. You see how he's wearing this hat? I think that's called a kippah. What is the name of Jewish hats? The skull caps are no okay. These skull caps, also known by their Yiddish name, yarmulks. Yarmulks. Oh yeah, right here. Look, kippah. You can call it either a kippah. Okay, this one says the meaning behind different Jewish hats. Okay, this video is now taking a turn. Yeah, you'll recognize a lot of these. Like you have these like from a side view, these look rectangular, but they're like a wheel, or they're round. You have the kippahs, and then you have just this. My understanding is that you have the Ashkenazi Jews that were mostly in Eastern Europe, and so they just kind of adopted that style. And my understanding is that the reason why the Orthodox Jews dress the way that they do is because they want to always be ready to meet God. That's I could be wrong, but I think that's what I read. And I think there's something similar when it comes to wearing a kippah, is that it's like respect, basically. Let's just see the meaning behind different Jewish hats: kippah, shtreimel, fez, and more. A guide to Jewish headgear. Nearly every Jewish community has some kind of head covering tradition, but there are many different areas about who should wear them and when. There are also a remarkable array of styles. Well, that's good. Express your individuality. In this article, we'll explain the tradition of Jewish head covering and review some of the most common styles you'll see around the world. A brief history of Jewish head covering. Traditionally, Jewish men have covered their heads for centuries as a sign of reverence and respect for God's presence above. So, see, that's like what I was saying. Some Jewish women cover their hair when they are married in order to be modest in appearance. And I've spoken to my wife about this and she actually likes that. She thinks that it's pretty. She likes it. She's not going to start doing it, but anyway, this article focuses on hats worn. Okay, let me pull it. Jewish woman head covering. You see this here, like when you when you watch videos in of footage in Jerusalem, you'll see this pretty commonly. Like these, that they're Jewish women because they're with Jewish men, and they have these head coverings that they wear. And I agree with my wife. I think that it's pretty. I like hair too. I like it both. Uh, let me recommend. Okay, wow, this video is just all over the place. That's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Um, okay, what is that one channel I've been watching? Uh, it's like this guy that walks around Jerusalem. Walk around Jerusalem. Yeah, relaxing walker. Relaxing walker. You guys should check this channel out. I would highly recommend him. Oh, this is Tel Aviv right here, so I guess he just kind of goes around all of Israel. But I saw this really cool one. This one right here. This one. I would recommend this video. This is nighttime in Jerusalem. I think yeah, this was on Jerusalem Day. That's why this is how I found it. But this was a very relaxing video, and it was also educational at the same time. He walks down to the Western Wall, or the Kotel. That's the other name for it. I found out that there's a part of the Western Wall that like goes. It's not underground, but it kind of like goes into this kind of tunnel area where there's people that are there that are, doing the same thing, praying and reading um, scriptures, the Torah, I guess. So check this channel out, and I would recommend to subscribe because this is a way to see what modern day Israel, what it looks like, and walk around on the streets, and then you can check out all these different sites. Oh, look, here's Qumran. Um, Man, I want to watch more of this guy right now. I started this one right here. Jerusalem IDF soldiers prepare to take oath at the Western Wall. Okay, so anyway, if you watch these videos, you'll see a lot of this right here. Maybe you're already familiar with it. So women do it too. When they are married in order to be modest in appearance. This article focuses on hats worn for the purpose of reverence, modesty hair coverings, scarves, wigs, and hats worn mostly by Orthodox women are discussed here. And there's like a link for that. The origins of Jewish head covering practices are not entirely clear. The Torah says that Aaron, the first high priest, wore a head covering as part of his ceremonial garb. Uh, in the Talmud, Rav Huna is quoted as saying that he did not walk a distance of 4 cubits, about 6 feet, with his head uncovered to acknowledge the divine presence above his head. The mother of Rav Naaman bar Yishak learns that her son is destined to be a thief, and so she makes him cover his head and pray for divine mercy. He manages to behave well until that covering accidentally slips off, and he succumbs to the temptation to steal some dates. Oh, okay. Though these ancient texts seem to imply that head covering was specifically the province of Jewish religious leaders, by the medieval period it was widespread. Maimonides wrote that head covering was required for prayer. Okay, so his name comes up a lot. He must have been one of the sages. You know, in Jewish they have the sages, like rabbis that were great rabbis. So he's saying that it was required for prayer. And the most influential medieval Jewish law code, the Shulchan Aruch, states that men are to cover their heads when walking more than 4 cubits. By this time, head covering was de rigueur for Ashkenazi Jews. Those are what I was talking about, like mostly the Eastern European Jews. In the 20th century, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, an American Orthodox legal authority, issued a special dispensation for men to not wear a kippah at work if necessary, implying that the practice is generally obligatory. Excuse me. Today, most Jewish men who identify as Orthodox cover their heads at all times, except when sleeping or bathing, or swimming, right? Do they go swimming? Uh, Jews from non-Orthodox movements also cover their heads, men, and in some cases women. Some wear a head covering all the time. Others wear one. Others wear one just inside a synagogue while studying Torah and or when eating. Many choose a kippah for this purpose, also called a yarmulke or skull cap, but others fulfill the obligation with any kind of secular head covering. Uh, Baseball caps are popular. Interesting. That's interesting. Um, so you have to wonder about that sometimes when you know that someone's Jewish and if they're wearing a baseball cap. Like I picture, I think I've seen J.J. Abrams. I don't know. Maybe he was just wearing it just for normal purposes. I swear I've seen. Let's move on. Uh, in the Reform movement, many do not cover their head, even in the synagogue, as this was actively discouraged at one time, though in recent years the movement has moved back toward head covering during prayer. The Reform movement, those are basically the Jews that are like more and more secular. They take the scriptures to be just more philosophy than actual story. They're kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum from the Orthodox Jews. Okay, the kippah, knit, felt, satin, Bukharian, and more. A kippah, or yarmulke, is a kind of minimal cap that covers the crown of the head. It is worn for religious purposes, not for sun protection or keeping off rain. Some Jews will wear a kippah under a different kind of hat. Really? That's interesting. There are several styles of kippot, that's the plural, that are common around the world. Often the style of kippah worn signals the religious and even political affiliation of the wearer. Knitted kippah, the name aside, this kind of kippah is actually crocheted and is a favorite of modern Orthodox Jews. Oh, and is favored by modern Orthodox and Dati Leumi in Israel. They come in a variety of colors. Well, look, here's a Superman one. Um, I kind of like this one because it has kind of like camouflage colors. If you're a Barcelona fan of football, soccer, you might like this one. I like this one. I like blue. Okay. Um, okay. Here's a velvet kippah. Anyway, I'm not going to read all this. You know, here's the different kippahs. These are pretty cool because these look like vintage or original or like I don't know. Although I do wonder about these Strimal Spodek Kolpik. I want to know about. Uh, oh, here it is. Okay, these are these are all large cylindrical fur hats, usually worn on Shabbat or festivals, and to weddings. The Strimal is a very wide brown hat made from animal tails, usually fox, marten, or minx, while the Spodek tends to be a taller and dyed black. Because of Spodek is okay. Sorry, I know I'm all over the place on this one. Let's read up here. Haredi Jews often recognized by their distinctive dress, including large black hats. But while black hats that are worn during the week and fancier, sometimes fur hats are favored on Shabbat and other special occasions. These are generally worn over top of a kippah because two headed coverings are considered more meritorious than one. Interesting. So these people are probably wearing a kippah underneath these hats. That is interesting. And this guy is wearing a talit, which is this shawl right here. Okay. Okay. So enough about the hats. So I think what this is referring to is really Naftali Bennett being like openly religious. I think it's talking about the fact that he wears the kippah because I don't think I've seen the other Jewish prime ministers wear this. Uh, let's take a look. Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's just look at an image search. Let's see if we can see the back of his head. I don't think I've ever seen him wear one. Well, he's wearing one here, but he's also looks like he's at some kind of special occasion. But like, well, here's another one. But he also looks like he might be at a special occasion. I don't think he typically wore one, when he was like doing his job, being prime minister and stuff like that. If you know more about this, about the other Israeli prime ministers not being openly religious, then please do fill me in. But I think that might be part of it, the fact that he doesn't wear a kippah while he's doing his duties. But Naftali Bennett, I've always, like every time I see him, he is wearing his kippah. So anyway, okay. Despite the coalition leader Naftali Bennett being the first openly religious prime minister in Israel's history, his government is widely perceived as anti-religious. Last week, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu, the chief rabbi of Safed, I don't know what that is, and a member of the chief rabbinic council, sent a formal rebuke to Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, warning that the divisiveness fostered by members of his government could lead to a civil war. Uh, I'm taking that as like a literal civil war, not like a political one. And then there's a link for it. There's a link for it. Prominent rabbi warns Bennett of civil war. Well, since we're all over the place, let's read this a little bit. Sent a formal letter of rebuke to Israeli Prime Minister Bennett. The rabbi, now when was this? Oh, this was June 19th. So this is just a little while ago. The rabbi opened by referring to a statement made by Bennett last Monday in which he accused critics of his coalition with the Arab parties led by Mansour Abbas as burning barns. This was a reference to the period in 68 Common Era, or AD, when Roman Emperor Vespasian laid siege to Jerusalem. At the time, Jerusalem had the wherewithal to withstand a protracted siege. Its barns were overflowing with enough provisions to feed the population for no less than 21 years. The Zealots preferred an immediate conflict over a siege and set fire to the barns. Now, again, back in those days, in the time of Christ, you had Sadducees, Pharisees. There were different groups, but there were also Zealots. And my understanding of them is that, all these different groups had a different approach when it came to the Roman occupation. And the Zealots, just like what we're reading right here, they wanted to just all out go to war against Rome. It was intolerable. They wanted Rome out. Whereas Pharisees and Sadducees were more level-headed, I guess, or willing to suffer through it. So, but the Zealots were having none of it. So that gives you context for what's happening here. The Zealots are like, no, we're not going to do this for 21 years. Burn the barns. We're going to go now. So Rabbi Eliyahu disagreed with the prime minister. Quote, Mr. Prime Minister, I heard what you said about the danger of division and burning of barns that destroyed the kingdom of Israel and sent us into exile of 2,000 years. Oh, now that's interesting because he's suggesting here that maybe if that hadn't happened, then maybe Israel would have been successful at, winning that conflict. Successfully drawn it out, possibly up to 21 years, and then maybe they would have still remained a nation. That's interesting. I had no idea about this story until just now. I'm glad that I clicked on that link. You said you think controversy is a national danger to lives because of the formation of a government that you believed would cure the fragmentation of Israeli society. For that, you agreed to make difficult moves in the hope that the religious, ultra-Orthodox, and others will join you, and there will truly be unification and unity. Unfortunately, the reverse has happened. He referred to an incident in March when Yisrael Beitenu, leader of Avigdor Lieberman, vowed to, quote, put former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the ultra-Orthodox parties into a wheelbarrow and throw them in a garbage dump. MK Yulia Malinowski wants to destroy the rabbinate. Rabbi Eliyahu added. Now, a deputy minister in the government is comparing Benjamin Netanyahu to a malignant disease. Excuse me. What person would agree to sit in such a government? I'm going to skip this next part. Quote, these dangerous things are heard in all the media, but most of all your silence and that of your friends in government are heard. I hope you do not think like him, but some people will surely interpret your silence as an admission of his words. Otherwise, it is impossible to understand how the state's attorney office violated all the rules of law to accuse Netanyahu. Only if you understand that they look at it as something worse than a malignant disease do you understand their behavior. Okay, so I think he's mostly talking about. I don't know if he's like really talking about actual civil war. It might just be rhetoric. He's probably just talking about how, oh yeah, your government was supposed to unite everybody, all these different points of view, but actually it just made the division worse. So, okay, well, we'll just end it there. So, at least some people are looking at this from a religious point of view. I would assume, in a wider sense, most all religious Jews are probably looking at it as from a religious point of view, because they're all expecting Messiah. So maybe in their heart of hearts, they're hoping that something will happen. Whenever there's a change of government, that's a serious thing, and it's a potential opportunity for Messiah to show himself. So anyway, it's just interesting to see what they're saying here. You have different reactions to what's going on, different reactions to Bennett's government. And then we learned a little bit about kippahs and women's head coverings. Okay, so that's going to be it. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.